Before we get into this episode, a quick thank you to the brands that make Master Integrator possible. This episode is brought to you by ADI Global, formerly Snap One, your one-stop partner for professional integration. ADI brings together powerhouse brands like Control4, Arachnus, Binary and Strong, along with a carefully curated range of distributed products, all under one roof. More than that, they back it up with real integrator-first support, from system design to installation and well beyond handover. They're focused on helping you deliver smarter, more reliable projects, because when you win, they win. If you want to learn more, give the team a call on 1800 990 548. We're also supported by Sonance, the benchmark in architectural audio. If you're working in spaces where design matters just as much as performance, Sonance makes it possible to deliver incredible sound without compromising the aesthetic. From discreet, small aperture speakers that disappear into timber ceilings to completely invisible solutions, they give you the tools to satisfy both the client and the designer. Sonance is available exclusively in Australia through Amber Technology. Now, if you're looking for serious design firepower behind your next project, let me introduce you to Colosseum. Colosseum is a white-label design and documentation partner built specifically for integrators, specialising in cinema and media room design, lighting control, and automation engineering. And their new Spark program is a big deal. If your vendor is Spark-enabled, you can unlock Colosseum-designed cinemas at nearly half the usual cost. Lower upfront investment, immersive 3D walkthroughs, faster sales conversations. Colosseum really is the design and documentation wingman you didn't know you needed. Hello and welcome to Master Integrator. I'm your host, Paul Skelton. I want to start today with a story about a little girl called Bethany. One day, Bethany and her sister were sitting together watching SpongeBob SquarePants. Both of them in little pink jackets and little painted shoes. Just two kids watching TV. Except they were watching on a cinema system that cost the equivalent of about 70,000 Australian dollars in a log cabin at a home for terminally ill children. Every piece of that system had been donated by our industry. The installers had given their time for free, and the man who had made it happen was standing in the doorway watching those two little kids when he quietly walked out, found a corner, and had a moment. When he pulled himself together and got on the train home, one thought kept coming back to him. We can do this again, and again, and again. That was 2010. Today, in 2026, Ian Morrish has turned that thought into 58 fully donated cinema rooms in children's hospices, adults' hospices, hospital wards, and respite centres right across the UK. Rooms worth a combined total of £1.5 million. Every single bit of it given freely by our industry. Every installer who's ever walked onto one of these jobs has said the same thing. It was the most rewarding install that had ever been part of, and not one of them got paid a cent. Ian is the founder of Together for Cinema, now a registered community interest company in the UK. And he spent the last 16 years building something that has genuinely changed lives. And he's not stopping there. He's just launched a new initiative called GivingBack.Tech. It's a platform that connects AV industry donors, integrators, distributors, manufacturers with registered charities who need the gear. Second-hand kit, discontinued stock, B-grade products. Stuff that would otherwise sit in a warehouse or end up in landfill, going instead to good causes who can actually use it. It's a simple idea and it's long overdue. We had a really honest conversation today about how Together for Cinema started, how we kept it going through COVID, what it actually feels like to spend your days working in and around children's hospices, and what he thinks the AV industry's responsibility is when it comes to the gear we generate and the good we could be doing with it. I think you're going to get a lot out of this one. But before we get into it, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors who make this show possible, because without them, these conversations simply wouldn't happen. First up, ADI Global. If you're in this industry and you're not across what ADI offers, you should be. They're one of the world's largest distributors of AV, security, and extra low voltage products, and they're a genuine partner to integrators, not just a supplier. Worth having that relationship in your corner. Next, Sonance, distributed here in Australia by Amber Technology. Sonance has been the benchmark for architectural audio for decades, and for good reason. When a client wants speakers that genuinely disappear into the space and still sound extraordinary, that's where you start. Talk to the team at Amber if you haven't already. Coliseum are also on board. If you want to deliver truly world-class cinema, lighting, or smart home documentation to your clients, Coliseum are the people to speak to. The team really understands what an integrator needs. And finally, Connected Magazine. If you're serious about this industry, you should be reading Connected. It's the go-to publication for the connected home and building technology space here in Australia. Great editorial and great people behind it. Thank you to all 4 of those businesses for backing this show. Please support the sponsors who support our industry. All right. This is Master Integrator. Here's Ian Morrish. Welcome to the show. For the audience of Master Integrator who might not be familiar with you, give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are and the Ian Morrish story and how we got here today.
Okay, I'll try and keep it as brief as I can, Paul. I'm 35 years in the AV industry. I have worked for CEDIA and the ISC Integrated Systems Europe show, and basically selling exhibition space and organising sponsor packages for both events. I'm not technical, but I can multiply 6 meters by 8 and multiply that by a square meter rate and come up with a figure. So that's all I needed really to do. Lots of engagement with lots of businesses in that time. So had a good sort of black book of contacts. And during my time at ISC, I started something called Together for Cinema, which I know we're going to talk about in a minute, which is now my full-time role in the industry. And I'm based just south of London in the UK.
Excellent. So you raised Together for Cinema. So let's go straight into that. So what exactly is Together for Cinema and how did you start this?
Okay. Well, it was unknowingly started Together for Cinema in 2009. While I was working at the ISE show in Amsterdam, things were going very well. Sales were great. The show was growing. And I sort of wanted to give a little bit back to the community because the AV world had taken care of me. And I was watching a program in England called The Secret Millionaire, which was about a millionaire who goes to a less advantaged area in the UK. And this chap went to Blackpool and he visited a holiday home for terminally ill children, as the name was then. It's now Children with Short Lives. And it moved me greatly. And I just thought, well, I'm going to donate. My wife was pregnant with our first child. And, it was that time in my life where, perspective was changing. So I was going to donate some money. I phoned up the chap at Donna's Dream House, which was the place. And cut a long story short, 14 months later, we opened up a fully functioning donated cinema room at Donna's Dream House in one of the log cabins that had been donated by the millionaire. And it was a sort of £35,000 system. It was amazing. All donated. The installers did the work for free. All the product was donated. We had a lady helping us with PR. Everyone covered their own expenses. And it was a real pure delivery of good, I felt. The moment at which I thought, hang on, we could do this again. We could do this again and again, maybe, was when I saw a little girl called Bethany and her sister watching SpongeBob SquarePants on this £35,000 system, knowing that Bethany wasn't to be with us very long. And they're both sitting there in little pink jackets, little patent shoes. I broke down. I had to walk away and get away, had my moment, and then came back and on the train home just thought, we can do something else. That's how Together for Cinema began in 2009, and 2010 was our first install.
So if we go back to that first install,
yeah,
you've obviously gone out to integrators, to suppliers with a concept that no one's really tried in our industry this idea of a charitable organisation that installs home cinemas.
Yeah.
What were those initial conversations like? Because I know suppliers get asked all the time for freebies and they get kind of tapped on the shoulder. So how did you navigate that, and what was their response?
Fortunately, I've had the reputation in the industry over the years as being the most professional Rottweiler in our industry, which I think is a lovely tag. I think that had they not used the word professional, I'd have been upset. People, distributors, manufacturers, and so on, knew that when Ian rang, if he got you, it's probably going to cost you something, be it exhibition space, a sponsorship opportunity, or whatever it was. And I joke about that tag, but basically I was very fortunate to have access to people in the industry who were decision makers, sales and marketing decision makers, who generally had the facility to donate a product or two. And I think when you go to someone and pull a heartstring, and I was never ashamed to pull heartstrings because we're just doing good here. But when, you pull a heartstring and say, guys, look, this is for a holiday home for terminally ill kids, it's not hard for people to go, I'll find a way. And that's how it started. And we'll get to where we are now, but that sort of recipe has continued, without needing to pull heartstrings, because people now, I think, want to get involved with Together for Cinema, because the difference we've made in the UK is huge. Actually, it's absolutely huge. And I've witnessed some of the very, very, very moving stories of change and difference, of creating a cradled environment of a cinema room in their safe medical space where the family can just relax for a couple of hours and watch a movie in a great system, knowing that the nursing team are next door, and knowing that the children can behave in whatever way they choose, and so on. I'm not ashamed at all. It's a fantastic thing we're doing, and I'm very proud of the whole industry for engaging what we do and supporting it.
So how has it evolved? I mean, how many cinemas have you installed, and how has the process changed? Because I imagine back then it was untested. It would have been a process that you were trying to work out as you went.
Yeah.
So how has it changed to what it is today?
It was all sort of back of a cigarette. Well, I smoked at the time, but the back of a cigarette pack type notes. It was, on planes while I was flying over to Infocom or CEDIA, all sorts of moments just to try and make something happen. The way it evolved, and after our first install and second and third install, I thought, we can do this again. Let's do 25 installs by 2020. I thought that'd be a good target. We achieved that. COVID hit February 20. We achieved 25 in September 2020. Had they been paid for value of about £600,000. So we got all of this kit donated. We got installers, generally CEDIA installers, pretty much all of them. So thank you to CEDIA for their engagement with their members. And we had hit our target, and that was really exciting. COVID hit. I had left ISC. I was going to join KNX in a global role, which didn't happen because of COVID. They couldn't take more contractors on, so it got delayed. And the industry said to me, what's happening with Together for Cinema? And I said, I don't know, but probably it's gonna sort of wind up. We've hit our target, and I've now got to get another proper job, and so on. And I had 4 offers, none of which I really wanted to do. And then Monitor Audio from the UK were the first company that said, Ian, we'll give you £5,000 in the pot. Go make this happen. Go full time. And they helped, and I went out and got other sponsors and partners and so on and so forth. That's how it evolved. Since then, 2021, when I went full time, on a significantly lower wage than my successful selling career at ISC, which, as we all know, was a very hugely successful show. But I was okay with this because it was that time in my life I wanted to do something different. We now, come to 2026, have installed, well, firstly, we're a registered community interest company in the UK. So we come under Companies House, and we have legal obligations to deliver good in the community and be not-for-profit. So that sort of secures. We have 3 other directors, Melanie Malcolm, who was on the CEDIA Global Board for a few years, Chris Pinder, who is a manufacturer and distributor in the UK, very well known and very well respected. and then a local chap to me who is just brilliant at business. He's just brilliant, and me. So just 4 of us, but we are answerable to Companies House. So that sort of secures it. But now we are, 2023, we became a CIC, full-time in 21 for me. And as of 2026, we've now installed 58 rooms in the UK. We're in about 35 children's hospices, and a few adult hospices, a few other respite care centres, 1 or 2 children's wards of NHS hospitals, and so on. Everywhere where we install, we're making a really, really positive difference to a family, a child, the care team, etc., siblings who are going through a tough time. And those 58 rooms, had they been paid for, would have cost about 1.55 million. And we will reach 2 million by 2028, and we should reach 75 rooms by then. It's really exciting, and it's a lovely difference. And the industry are, behind us. Funding, sorry, I'll just very quickly cover the funding. We have about 70 partners in the UK, companies that put some money in the pot to run Together for Cinema. And running any company with, formal accountants, legal advice and so on, is expensive. So, but we're so grateful to everyone that supports.
Those are amazing numbers. I think that's probably a lot higher than what a lot of people watching this would actually think a charity would be able to deliver. So that's a fantastic output. So, I mean, with my role, obviously within CEDIA, I know the idea of mobilizing an industry is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
To get everyone on the page going towards the same outcome. So I guess, how have you managed to do that? But also, what have those kind of hurdles been to get everyone to get that buy-in, to have the same vision?
I think I go back to my reputation as being a professional Rottweiler. I'm quite determined, and I knew that what we were doing was a good thing. And I always described Together for Cinema as a pure and unquestionable good, which it is, because there's no money changes hands. And the money didn't change now for 25 years. Then we got partners. Sorry, for 25 installs. So between 2009 and 2021, no money changed hands. The delivery was pure. Now, yes, there's some partnership money that comes in to run the business. But still beyond that, on every install, virtually every install, we have to buy 1 or 2 bits of kit with the budget we have allocated. But the installers install for free. Virtually every installer of the 58 rooms has said to me, that was the most rewarding installation I've ever done. And they've got no money for it. It's because they're making a really positive difference. And when you get involved with these venues, you feel it. You absolutely feel it. And there are, as I say, lots of stories I can tell you that would sort of make your heart burst. There's some tough stuff going on out there. But yeah, it's just become a well-supported. I think initially it was people didn't want to be seen not supporting. I think now people want to support. And I don't think they care if they're seen or not to support. They want to support because what we have delivered is positive change. And I think that's very, very powerful. Once that sort of infiltrates the industry and the emotion starts to be felt by people, it's very easy to find it's very easy for Epsilon to find a projector if they really want to. And they do. That's brilliant. Monitor audio, basically whatever I want, Control 4, whatever. And there's so many other brands, Reco and so on. I shouldn't name brands actually, because I'll always miss people, but the support is comprehensive, which is amazing. It enables us to, as an industry, I use us as a royal us, the royal we. It enables us as an industry in the UK to make a really positive difference that touches people's hearts.
I'm interested in the integrators who have been involved with this, because a lot of these guys, they're small businesses.
Yep.
They might not, be, I won't say hugely successful, but they might not be turning over millions of dollars or millions of pounds a year. Yep. Are you finding the integrators who are getting involved that they are the bigger companies, or is there a healthy mix? Is it kind of the same integrators that do most of the projects, or do you have some coming out of the woodwork for one project saying, I want to get involved?
It's it's a mix. We know we've had some integrators that have done 3 or 4 installs for us. We've had 1 or 2 of the bigger companies. Mainly, it's the smaller 1 or 2 man, probably sort of 1 to 8 staff member integrators that are hugely supportive and just want to get involved. And most installs are probably between 2 and 4 days of work, but they know that there's no product. It's all their time and they rally their carpenter, they rally their their electrician and so on. No, they rally their team to come in and help as well. The one thing I have to say, there's two areas people always say to me: how do you get the integrators? How do you get the product? Actually, that's the easy bit, I think. Without sounding arrogant, I think it is the easy bit, because now with the work we've done and the feel good we have in the UK with this, finding integrators is easy. They're almost queuing up to get involved. And I use that phrase loosely. We have 9 installs planned this year. We have 7 integrators already sorted, and the 2 that aren't sorted are because I don't know the exact venue of those last 2 installations. One's for the Ronald McDonald House charity in the UK, and they're just determining the venue, and we need to make sure we get an integrator who's close to the venue for obvious reasons. And again, product is, again, I use the phrase easy, not quite easy, but it's there. It's there. So the integrators are hugely supportive. As a community, the CEDIA UK community is behind this. Manufacturers, distributors, integrators, they are all supporting what we do.
So just a moment ago, you mentioned, obviously you've got goals in place of what you're looking to achieve in the next couple of years.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, what is the roadmap to get there? Do you already know what those projects will be? Is there scope to do global projects, or will this entirely be in the UK?
I think entirely in the UK. So, and I'll give you my reasoning for that. So current we're on 58. We have 9 more planned for this year. Let's say we lose 1, 8, go to 66. And my target is to hit 75 installs and £2 million worth of value by May 2028. In May 2028, we have a dinner planned to celebrate £2 million worth of installs. And we will have our friend Chesney Hawkes, who is the one and only, if you've got to know Chesney, coming back to sing for us. And we hope that will all fall into place and be another great night. We had a good night in 2024 for our £1 million dinner. So that's the target for me. It's likely I will probably step back in 2028 as well. And we have a succession plan and someone perfect to come in and sort of work with me and then take over the journey of Together for Cinema and other projects. We will get there. We have, as I say, 9 installs planned this year. Next year, I already know, I think, 4 of the venues that we're going to work with. Once word gets round that, somebody is offering you a free cinema room, rest assured you get a few. So I don't think we'll have a problem finding suitable venues. And we don't just go anywhere. They've got to be venues where a family's difficult journey is being cradled. That could be a children's hospice, could be an adult hospice, could be a children's hospital ward, of which there are loads in the UK. And but do they have a room that we can go in and change and install in? A lot of them don't. So some of the installations are really challenging. You're working around hoist and to define medical, requirements and care needs and so on. And that is ultimately the priority, the medical and care need and the cradling of the family's journey or a child or adult's journey. But if we can come in and be discreet, custom install, we can be discreet and we can create something that works in that particular room, then we will do. But those are our goals, to get to 75. And then whoever comes in after me, they're very good, this person. I know they have I'm not going to say he or she, they have the same ethic as me. And I will still be involved. I won't just disappear. I'll stay on as director. But it's very exciting and a lovely thing to give back.
So I imagine that there is quite a strong demand, sadly, for what you are doing. As you said, there's a lot of hospice centres. I know in the work that I do with the disability sector here, it is a massively growing market. So I guess how do you go about selecting those facilities that you work with, other than just the actual, I guess, physical constraints of the building? Because I imagine that ultimately you're going to be letting people down. You're obviously making some people's lives fantastic, but there's still going to be some people who are quite disappointed. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, not really, actually. I mean, we don't push and publicise to the charity sector at the moment. It's almost just a self-perpetuating churn, and our pipeline is not full, but our pipeline is okay. If we need to turn that up, we can do. We'd go to Together for Short Lives, which is the umbrella charity for children's hospices in the UK, of which there are 54. We're in about 35 of them, 35, 36. There are more that we could install, and we just turn that pipeline on. We ask Together for Short Lives to issue an offer and then newsletter with an update of where we are. Suddenly we'll get 3 more calls. But we don't need to do that, actually, because we have our pipeline, which is fairly decent. In terms of selecting, I just think, as I said before, any venue where there is a cradling a family's journey, and that I genuinely feel, and gosh, I say it sounds like I'm not. No, it's just someone's got to make a call on this. And I think my ethic on this is very defined and very understanding, that we have to make that cradle difference for a family. And if we do, I'm happy to help. I had an inquiry this morning, from a Marie Curie adult hospice in Liverpool, and I haven't contacted them yet. But I'll say to them that yes, we can get a visit out to go and see you, and we can't do anything till next year, but we will help them. It's difficult. It's difficult, actually, but I think the fact I'm full time enables me to sort of structure and work it accordingly.
Let's pause for a moment and hear from our partners. Connected is your go-to publication for the commercial and residential AV and smart home industry. If you missed the AETM conference in late 2025, or you were there and want a clear, considered wrap-up, the latest edition distills the standout sessions, recurring themes, and big ideas shaping where the industry is heading. From technology shifts and system design thinking through to business strategy, it's all unpacked in one place. You'll find the full wrap-up in the current edition of Connected, along with ongoing industry news online. The links are in this episode's description. Keeping in mind then the goals that you do have.
Yeah.
And you're saying obviously you can find product, you've got some integrators kind of lined up who are interested in getting involved.
Yeah.
What do you need then from industry at this point? Is there something that you are struggling to get a hold of, or is there something that there's a hurdle in place that you want to see shift, and this is a platform to say, come on guys, change that.
Well, I mean, gosh, most product we can get hold of. I mean, one of the challenges is smart TVs, large format smart TVs. They are difficult to get hold of. However, Hisense have helped, Samsung have helped. We get monitors, we get really good monitors. I mean, IAMA have been very helpful. And, again, I wasn't going to mention brands, but, I think large format smart TVs is a challenge because they're hot products. So we have bought some at a reduced rate. And then that leads me to the cry for funds. It's hard at the moment running a charity or a community interest company because fundraising is tough. We organise a 55-mile bike ride from London to Brighton in the UK, basically central London down to the south coast. That raises about 20,000 for us. But we need the revenue from our partners, and we're down on revenue this year from our partners, about 25%. Now that's okay. We can ride that. But if that happened every year, we'd be in trouble. And what I don't want to do is spend 4 months fundraising because the money is difficult to get hold of. And I would achieve what we need to do in 4 months rather than spending a month and a half, which is what I've sort of done before, renewals and 1 or 2 new partners. And thanks very much, for your £2,500 again. And so on, get the money in place, then go do the good stuff. I don't want to spend 4 months getting the money in place and then only 8 months doing the good stuff, because that limits what we can deliver. So I think funding is key, and 1 or 2 hot products like, smart TVs, video conferencing bars, which is now, I think, not part of a cinema room, but we donated this video conferencing bar, and this is a really emotional story, to a children's hospice in Stoke in England. And it was given to us by Logitech. And it was a video conference with camera and super speakers, headphone and whatever, speakers and so on. Plugged in, plug and play, very easy. And it enabled, because they didn't have a video conferencing setup, apart from Zoom and Teams, which is a bit limiting. And it enabled on a big screen for a family who had a child who had, and I don't remember the illness, a terminal illness that was very, very, very rare. And there was someone else in Cornwall who had the same illness. And it enabled these 2 children and their families and their care team to engage and talk with each other about their journey. Sadly, both journeys have now likely come to an end. But what a thing to make a difference, to enable a family who were going through a really tough time and a child who was just looking for fun every second of the day to engage together. I mean, that, even now still gets me. And don't get me wrong, I don't think, we did anything special. We gave them a video conferencing bar. That was it. But that story I heard, which was, probably bigged up a little bit by the venues and so on for emotion, but, that's really strong, really strong. So I think there's lots of hot plug and play products. The obvious one is like Sonos speakers. Everyone wants Sonos speakers. They're incredibly hard to get hold of. Free of charge. It's tough. So, if the CEO of Sonos is listening to this, please ring me. We could do it with some kit. And don't get me wrong, they have been very supportive as well in the UK. So we're grateful for all the support we get, but we can always get a bit more, financially and hot products. So those are the challenges, but they're overcomeable. They really are. They're not insurmountable.
So I've noticed a couple of the stories that you've mentioned. It is very much, I guess, rooted in that emotional link to the environment that you're working in.
Yeah.
And I've asked this question before of a couple of people working within disability and someone who was working within the domestic violence sector. So I'm wondering, from your own personal experiences, is how do you navigate that, I guess, the emotional weight of working in that space? So, you don't carry that home every night, and it affects your own life and your own home life. And I guess, how do you reconcile what you're doing with that? And that's a really good question. And there is, it's a very difficult answer, but I'll just give you some examples. When I started this in 2009, we had our first install in 2010. From 2010 to about 14, I engaged with children's hospices. And that was really difficult because they're very keen to give you the tour. And it sounds odd to go touring the children's hospice. But the first few, because they knew I was quite new to this world, they gave me the tour. And the first 3 tours I had, when you get taken around, you meet some of the families, and you get taken to the room where the children lay once they passed away, which is a cold room with a cold mattress and so on. It's the reality. Absolutely broke me. And I walked out, sat in the car, and just burst into tears. Bear in mind, we just had our first child, and my wife is now pregnant with our second son. I just broke down. It was too much, but it's the reality day to day. But that experience, and then my further engagement, made me realize that, Ian, you can't get upset. In every second of these children's lives, however long they have, and the family, has to be a sparkle. It has to be as sparkly as it possibly can be. So I sort of looked at children's hospices as being the most inspiring, inspirational, happy places, because they have to be. Of course, there are very dark times. But that was sort of one realization, and with anything, these things have got to come from within you. That came from within me, and I just looked, these are amazing places, and it's a privilege to work with them. It really is. The other aspect is that, people say to me, my God, how do you do your job?
in the industry. People who know me from my ISC and CEDIA days. How do you do your job? You know, mostly it's really tough. But the way I look at it is it's very simple. I'm still that professional Rottweiler. I'm still a salesman in our industry, making something happen. I'm not making a trade show happen. I'm not making a seminar guide or show guide happen. I am making other things happen. It's exactly the same process. You talk to someone, you get something out of somebody, be it a product or a little bit of money to run the business, and then you go make something happen. And then you finish it off and you go on to the next job, you go on to the next show or the next magazine or whatever it is. And that's the way I have to look at it. I think when I reach, retirement and I sit down with a large scotch and sit down and think, how was your career, Ian? I'll go, well, yeah, maybe that might hit me then. But until then, this is just a job. It's a great job. It's a privileged job, but it is still a job where I'm making something happen. And I'm still that sales guy, that Rottweiler in the industry. That's how I cope with the emotion, I think.
And I guess now Together for Cinema is not the only thing that you are working on. You've got another, I guess, social enterprise that you've launched, which could be, significantly bigger and have a global impact. So let's talk a little bit about GivingBack.Tech.
Well done. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Really exciting. And firstly, with the journey with Together for Cinema, saw lots of products and cinema rooms happening. But during that time, there was always a little bit more kit. So sometimes I was going like TV has been hard to get. We've had one or two companies go, well, we've got 3 sort of 48-inch TVs available. Do you want them? Oh, yeah. So, and lots of other products like this video conferencing that I mentioned. So during the time of Together for Cinema, we've donated another £300,000 to £400,000 worth of products. And those products have been random. Could be just a speaker set for a music room or whatever it might be. But lots of other products. So it became very clear to me there's an awful lot of kit in our industry that is available. A lot of this kit gets landfilled, binned, recycled, whatever it might be. And it's sort of our industry crime. We all know it happens, but we all sort of accept it. And then we go back to our big houses and pour ourselves an expensive whiskey or whatever and think, aren't we doing well? Well, actually, there's a problem in our industry. Too much stuff gets landfilled. It's a global issue in every business. We know that. So I just thought there must be a better way. And, we're not going to change the world here. Rest assured, I don't think for any second, we're going to make a difference. We're going to send a message, but we're not going to change the world. We created a website called GivingBack.Tech, TECH. And this website the mechanics of the website are to repurpose secondhand, discontinued and B stock items in our industry, commercial and residential, to good causes, currently just in the UK. And it's a very simple website. You go on, you register as a donor, you post your product, however many that might be. As an integrator, you might have 5 that you've just ripped out from some footballer's house because he wants to upgrade because his mate's got a better system now, and so on. We all know how it works. Or it could be, the largest distributor in Europe or the world. There's one particular company who we're engaging with at the moment who might want to post 200 to 300 products on the website, and so on. Could be, any scale. The product is posted on the website after you've registered as a donor. That's categorized into the nature of the product and so on. And then beneficiaries, which are charities and community interest companies in the UK, can register again to become a beneficiary. We have to authorize them by checking their charity number or their registration number, the address the product would be sent to, and the contact name. It's about as far as the best way we can police it. Once they're registered as a beneficiary, they can then go search the product and they can say to company X, we'd like your TV, or that, we'd like that switcher, or we'd like, and then the company, the donor, would send the TV and or the switcher to the beneficiary at their cost, at the donor's cost. Now, the benefits of this are huge. Firstly, we're making a difference to a good cause who doesn't have a fluid budget to buy expensive AV kit. We're also enhancing their day-to-day operation. We're educating them about AV. So maybe some budget actually gets allocated in years to come. We're not paying any WE fees to take the products away. We're clearing space in the warehouse, so you can actually get product on the warehouse shelves that you can sell. And again, don't get me wrong, I do understand, these are very early days, so we're slowly catching monkey with this. but there are so many benefits. We're green, we're sustainable, we're meeting, the UN sustainability, one of the UN sustainability goals that they've given us a directive on by 2030, which is repurposing or recycling extended life product. It's a sort of natural progression of Together for Cinema, but it's something that should happen years ago, as we all know. But it's convenient commercially to sort of turn a blind eye, and I get that. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people do repurposing and recycling and are very conscious, very conscientious. But sometimes it's easy not to be. So this is just to give everyone the facility that should they choose to repurpose a product to a good cause, they can do. Currently, we have about 20 products on the site, but we're not launching till May to the beneficiaries. And by then, I'm expecting to have 300 to 400 products posted on the website, and we'll go out to 800 charities and community interest companies in the UK. And hopefully we'll see some traction. We understand this is not an overnight success. This will take years to bed in. The beauty of GivingBack.Tech is that the model, because it's a defined, structured, mechanical model on this website, it can't be tinkered with, so it can go anywhere. You can go to Australia, go to America, it can be translated into French, Spanish, German, and so on, because it has a defined structure. Together for Cinema, I'm very precious about the ethics and the operational standards there. I wouldn't give the Together for Cinema name to anybody because I'd like to be managing it and handling it and steering the ship. But certainly with GivingBack.Tech, it's a defined introduction of a donor to beneficiary and a simple transaction with no money changing hands. It's just a gift that is given. That's really exciting, been received really well. We have our first founding partner helping to fund it, which is Crestron. Dan Feldstein and I had a very long meeting actually at ISE, and he was very keen to support this initiative, which we hope will become habitual over the years. So sort of a long explanation, but it's really exciting.
So while you were explaining the process, I was trying to think of what the challenges for a supplier would be to get involved with this. And the only thing that I kind of came up with, and you did actually address it, was around potential warehousing.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, what are the other kind of challenges that the suppliers that you are talking to are raising? And I guess, how are you helping for them to understand the larger benefit in play here?
Okay. I mean, one of the things that a big distributor has mentioned to us, when I met this big distributor, you might be able to guess, but I won't mention the name because they're not fully committed yet, but I think they will be. They said, hey, we've got 8,700 products in our warehouse that are probably excess. But, I said, well, we can't do that. They said, well, a couple of hundred as a test would be good. So they mentioned API, which is sort of an automated system. I forget the exact word that API stands for, but it's basically an automated system where, your products can be sort of fed into the system. That's one challenge. How do we process a couple of hundred products? Another challenge is liability. What happens if there's a problem with the product when it's installed or gifted? Another problem is, what happens if the product arrives and it doesn't work? Well, it's a gift. So they go back to you and they say it doesn't work and you try and replace it. If you can't, you can't. We understand that some things might get broken in transit. The liability issue, we are comprehensively insured as GivingBack.Tech, as are the integrators who might help install, as are the manufacturers and so on. So there shouldn't be any challenges there. And ultimately, all products that are sent should be in full working order. So there shouldn't be any challenges there. Another question is, well, who installs the product for them? Well, every charity probably has a facilities manager or an AV consultant that they use intermittently. So if they aren't, asking for a high-tech bit of kit, they will have someone who will be able to install that bit of kit. But there's always technical assistance available as well with each item that's posted. For any technical assistance, please call or please go to this website and so on. So we've had some queries. People have engaged with it, have come up with one or two concerns. Each one we've been able to overcome because it's very simple. The simpler, the better as well.
And I mean, I'm not sure if this would apply to the UK, but I was also thinking from an Australian context, something like that, there might actually be a potential tax benefit too for someone to be involved, which is always appealing because no one wants to pay tax.
True.
But I'm wondering, obviously, there's the big element here of not just giving back to a charitable cause, but there is the sustainability side here as well of trying to eliminate some of that e-waste from the global environment. Have you got any, I guess, understanding or metrics of what kind of level of e-waste is currently being generated, and have you thought about maybe what type of impact this could have?
Not really, because firstly, it's incredibly early days. And until we get to a point, I think, where the industry, both commercial and residential, it's sort of, this becomes a little bit habitual. When an integrator goes out to an install and pulls out product, well, we've got to package it up because, it's going to go onto GivingBack.Tech. Until we're sort of at that sort of habitual stage, we don't really know how this is going to work. What we do know is that, we're not going to change the world here. We're extending and repurposing a product's life. It's still going to probably end up in landfill at some point, or going to be repurposed at some point. So we're extending the life, or giving a product a second life, which is one of the sustainability goals. I don't know about the impact. We don't know how this is going to go. What I do know, though, as I say, is that we're not going to change the world. We're sending a message. It's a collaborative effort from an industry that has to look at itself and take some more social conscience. And as I say, a lot of people already do. So I'm not criticizing anyone in any way, shape or form. We all do our bit. But this is just another way forward to try and make a difference. And the one thing I've learned with Together for Cinema is that good breeds good. And I think, with GivingBack.Tech, being green, looking at sustainability, helping a good cause, and please, anyone who donates, they will PR. I'd ask them to PR this because it's a good thing to do, and good things breed more good things. So there's a bigger picture here beyond just repurposing an AVR or a speaker. There's a bigger picture.
So we spoke a little bit about the roadmap and goals that you had for Together for Cinema.
Yeah.
With GivingBack.Tech, do you have anything similar? Would you have some goals you'd like to achieve over a certain period of time?
Yeah, it's really nothing defined as yet because we are in such early days. We want to launch in May. We want to launch with 300-400 products to 800 charities. That's the first point. Yes, of course. In 10 years' time, wouldn't it be amazing to be repurposing 2,500 products or 3,000 products to 100,000 products to 25,000 charities. There are 170,000 good causes in the UK, 140,000 charities, 30,000 community interest companies, and there's tens of millions of pounds worth, probably, of AV equipment that is potentially repurposable. So that would be, what an ultimate goal. All of those charities getting something from the AV industry, that's not going to happen. I just think the simple answer is to see balanced growth over the next 10 years. And when I say balanced growth, it's 300 products being offered to 500 charities, 1,000 products being offered to 2,000 charities, 2,000 products being offered to 4,000 charities, or whatever it might be. And if we can have that balanced stepping growth, I think that would be very exciting, because then that will self-perpetuate. The more momentum it gathers. So we know it's going to be slow. We know it's not going to happen overnight. And, in 6 months' time, we might only have, a few hundred charities engaging and so on. But anything is better than nothing.
So when I look at the Australian industry, I don't really see anyone doing anything even remotely similar to what you're doing with Together for Cinema or GivingBack.Tech.
Yeah.
So there are people who might be interested in saying, okay, I want to shift my model to being either more charity mindset or be more socially conscious.
Yeah.
I guess from your perspective, has it been worth it? And do you or have you had any regrets along the way?
Gosh, I'd never been asked that question. Has it been worth it? Unquestionably, yes. God, this is going to sound a bit egotistical. I don't want it to. But personally, for me to have had an idea in 2009 and to see it now in 2026 with the results that we've achieved, personally has been one hell of a ride. It's been amazing. As an industry, to sort of galvanize an industry to create the end result that we've created is incredible. You know, to feel that we have the industry with us on this is really special. So that's all a bit sort of personal. From an industry perspective, as you said, Paul, there was nothing like this I know elsewhere in the UK. I think America have had one or two things going on, and you know, I'm not sure other countries have. But to create something which has now become established in the UK, and I believe will continue, has it been worth it? 100%. Because the amount of moments I've had that will stick with me till the day I die of making a difference, a positive difference, and knowing that every day, these 58 cinema rooms are probably being watched by somebody at some point, by a family or a child, or every week. You know, it's just to know that is great. So yes, unquestionably worth it, and it will continue, which is the good thing. It has that much support. So yeah, it's from the industry, from friends in the industry, people I know very well, who are just so supportive. It proves to me and to us, everyone involved with Together for Cinema and GivingBack.Tech, that what we're doing is a right thing and a good thing to do. And I've always been a salesman. I've always had targets. I've always had, you know, commission to hit. And sometimes, you know, you get your commission checking, woo, off you go, and you go and buy something special or whatever. I understand that drive, and that drive will continue for many people. But the drive is different now, and it's a much nicer drive. It's a much nicer way to operate, knowing that, as I say, there is significant difference you're making. I say we as an industry are making on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, totally worth it. If anybody else wanted to, you were saying about the Australian industry, you know, if anybody else wanted to talk to me about how we do it, it's not rocket science. How I've done it, it's not rocket science. It's, you know, doable. I'd invite anyone to contact you, Paul, and you please to give them my details. You know, it isn't rocket science. It's just, I think, being in the right place in the industry, to be able to engage, and then to have that I'm going to make it happen attitude, and it's doable.
Ultimately, in terms of a legacy, let's say 20, 30, 40 years time, what are you hoping that Together for Cinema and GivingBack.Tech will be remembered for, and the impact that they've had?
Well, I hope they'll still be very current. It would be great if they were still going. I mean, as I said, there are 170,000 charities and community interest companies in the UK. That's a lot of installs. If someone did 80 a year, that's, you know, in 30 years, that's only 240. So I'd love to see it still continuing. I think the industry engagement is absolutely there, but it does need a driver. And as I said, the person that we have in mind to come in and take over is a very strong driver. It just needs that right individual to continue it, or it needs proper, in inverted commas, management. But I think Together with Cinema will continue. GivingBack.Tech, I'd love to see it become, as we mentioned earlier, sort of habitual industry norm. So when an integrator goes in, it's fine. Okay, we'll pack those up and give them to GivingBack.Tech. Big distributors may have a warehouse section for GivingBack.Tech product that are administered slightly differently, and so on. It's not too much of a challenge to see that happening. It just needs pumping. It needs imposing. And I think with where we are now, with the support we have together with cinema and the excitement behind GivingBack.Tech, I'm really optimistic that in, say, 20, 30 years' time, they're still going. They may not be. But whatever we've done so far, no one can change that. No one can take that away. So fingers crossed it continues.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Ian is one of those people who reminds you why this industry is worth showing up for. 35 years in AV, most of it selling exhibition space and sponsorships at some of the biggest shows in the world. And then one TV program, one phone call, and 16 months later, a fully functioning, donated cinema room for terminally ill children. That's Together for Cinema. Today we heard how Ian built that from a single install in 2010 into 58 rooms across the UK, with a combined value of £1.5 million and a target of $2 million by 2028. We talked about what it takes to keep showing up for that work emotionally, how the CEDIA community in the UK has rallied behind it, and why the integrators who volunteer their time consistently tell Ian it's the most rewarding installation they've ever done, for free. We also got an early look at GivingBack.Tech, Ian's new platform that is quite frankly solving a problem our industry has been quietly ignoring for years. How much AV gear goes into landfill when it could be going to a charity, a community group, or a hospice? GivingBack.Tech is building the infrastructure to fix that. It launches to beneficiaries in May, and I'd encourage every integrator, distributor, and manufacturer listening to this to get on that website and register as a donor. If this episode got you thinking about what you and your business could do, reach out to Ian. He said it himself, it's not rocket science, and he's happy to talk. I'll have his details in the show notes. A big thank you again to our sponsors, ADI Global, Sonance, distributed by Amber Technology, Coliseum, and Connected Magazine. Your support keeps this show going and keeps these conversations happening. Please support the businesses that support our industry. Thanks for listening to Master Integrator. I'm Paul Skelton. I'll see you next time.